I need to say something before the signal goes again. My name is Joel Marin. I'm a veterinarian. Large animal practice, mostly cattle and horses, out of a mobile clinic I run from a converted panel van. I've been driving Route 9 between Harlow and Denton since 4:30 this morning because Cal Britton called me about a heifer with a prolapsed uterus. And that's not something that waits for daylight. It's 6:14 now. I'm pulled over on the shoulder about 2 miles south of the Harlow town limit, engine running, headlights on. The radio's been cycling through static for the last 20 minutes. I found one station, just one, still putting out a signal. Some AM station out of Denton, KDNT, farm reports, and local weather. The DJ hasn't spoken in a while, but the carrier's still live. I can hear the hum of an open mic. I pulled over because I can't see the road. That's the simple version. The complicated version is that I've driven this stretch of Route 9 maybe 300 times in the last 4 years. In rain, in sleet, in pre-dawn black with no moon, and my brights cutting maybe 40 feet. I know what low visibility looks like. I know what fog looks like. This isn't fog. It came down off the ridgeline to the west about 15 minutes ago. Not rolling in, not settling. It dropped like something heavy releasing. One moment I had clear air, stars still visible through the driver's side window, the tree line sharp against the sky. The next moment I had about 8 feet of visibility, and the headlights weren't cutting through, they were reflecting back. The lights bouncing off the mist like it's hitting a surface. I've got my hazards on. I tried calling Cal to tell him I'd be late, and the call didn't connect. Not a failed call. It just didn't do anything. The screen showed the call going out and then went blank. I'm going to wait this out. That was my plan anyway. 6:22. I need to describe this carefully because I want to be accurate. And I'm finding that harder than it should be. The mist is not uniform. I noticed that about 5 minutes ago when I killed the headlights for a second to rest my eyes. With the lights off, the mist is a flat, nothing, not dark, not light, just a colorless absence of depth. No different than closing your eyes in the way. But when I turned the headlights back on, I could see variation in it. Denser patches and thinner patches moving at different speeds. The thinner areas let the light reach maybe 12 feet. The denser areas are like white walls. Those denser patches are moving. And they're not moving with any wind. I can tell because I cracked the window just a half inch, and the air outside is dead still. Not calm, still. No temperature to it. It's March. It should be in the 30s at this hour, and the air coming through that crack felt like nothing. Not warm, not cold. Like air that had been sitting in a closed room for 100 years. I rolled the window back up. The patches moved through the mist like something pacing. That's the word my brain keeps handing me, and I keep trying to reject. Pacing. Back and forth across the road, maybe 30 feet out, at the edge of where the headlights fail completely. Dense white shapes that hold together longer than any natural condensation pattern would. They drift left, pause, drift right. Sometimes 2 of them move in parallel. Sometimes one will stop. And the mist around it thins slightly, as if something inside it is pulling moisture toward itself. I'm watching one right now. It's directly ahead, maybe 40 feet out, and it hasn't moved in about 90 seconds. The headlights hit it, and the light just stops. Not scatters. Stops. Like the photons are being absorbed by something with more substance than water vapor. On the radio, KDNT's open mic just picked up a sound. A chair scraping, maybe. Someone's in that studio. I want them to talk. I want to hear someone else's voice confirm that the air outside is wrong. Because sitting alone in this van, watching shapes move through mist that shouldn't exist, I need to know it's not just me. 6:31. The radio just woke up. A woman's voice, mid-sentence, like she'd been talking to someone off mic and leaned back in without realizing the channel was live. She said, "Doesn't matter what they told County, the tower readings are wrong. We've got ground-level visibility at less than 10 feet across the entire valley, and the NWS station in Colton says their instruments show clear skies. Clear skies. I'm looking out the window at a wall of white, and they're telling me it's clear." Then she paused, and I heard her exhale, and she said, "Okay. If anyone's receiving this on KDNT's frequency, this is Lena Soto. I'm the morning producer. I came in early because our weather alerts triggered at 5:45 and nobody else was here. I have no engineer, no board op, and I'm broadcasting off backup because the main transmitter lost handshake with something about 20 minutes ago. I don't know how far this signal's reaching." I pulled my phone out and tried to call the station. Same thing as before, the call initiated and then vanished. No ring, no busy, no voicemail. Just gone. Lena kept going. She said the mist came down across the Denton Valley at approximately 5:50, faster than any weather event she'd ever seen documented. She said the sheriff's office had 2 units out on early patrol, and neither one had checked back in. She said the landlines at the station were working intermittently. She could receive calls but not make them. Then she read something that made me sit up straight. "I've had 4 callers in the last 10 minutes. All of them pulled over on roads within a 10-mile radius. All of them described the same thing. Dense patches inside the mist. Moving. Not with the wind. Every caller used the same word without prompting." She paused. "They all said shapes." She said it plainly. No drama. That's what got me. She said it like she was reporting a grain price. Matter of fact. Verifiable by multiple sources. Shapes in the mist. Then she said, "One caller, a woman on Farm Road 14, told me she turned off her engine to listen, and she could hear something moving outside her car. She described it as a dragging sound. Heavy, slow, and rhythmic. She said it circled her vehicle twice and then moved away toward the tree line." Lena asked anyone listening to stay in their vehicles, stay off the roads, and stay tuned. I turned the van's engine off. I listened. It's 6:39. I heard it. I need to be precise. After Lena's broadcast, I killed the engine. I left the headlights on because the battery's good and I didn't want to lose the visibility I had. Then I sat in silence with the radio volume low, and my window cracked that same half-inch. For about 3 minutes, nothing. The mist moved in its slow, heavy way. The dense patch ahead of me had drifted left and disappeared into the general white. Then, from the right side, maybe 20 feet off the shoulder, I heard something. Not dragging. That's what the woman on Farm Road 14 said, and I understand why she chose that word. But now that I've heard it myself, it's not quite right. It's more like settling, like something enormous slowly lowering its weight onto soft ground, then lifting it, then lowering it again. A compression sound. Wet earth being pressed flat by something too heavy for the stride it was taking. It was slow, deliberate. Each compression lasted maybe 2 full seconds, then a pause of about the same length, then the next one. I counted 7 of them. They moved from right to left across the road behind my van. Not in front of me, where I'd been watching. Behind me. I didn't turn around. I don't know why. Some part of my training, or maybe just animal instinct. the kind I've seen in 1,000 barn cats who freeze when something bigger enters the space. Told me not to move. Not to shift in my seat, not to turn my head, not to let the springs in this old driver's chair creak. 7 compressions, left to right behind the van, and then nothing. The mist on the left side thickened. I could see it in the side mirror, a dense white column, almost vertical, drifting slowly into the field beyond the shoulder. It was upright. I'm going to say that again because I need to hear myself say it. The shape in the mist was upright. It was tall, and it walked behind my van like I wasn't here. 6:51. Lena's been broadcasting in 10-minute intervals. I'm writing down what she says on the back of a herd health form I had on the dash, because I want a record. Here's what I've gathered. The mist covers an area she estimates at roughly 15 by 20 miles, centered on the Denton Valley. It extends north to the Harlow Ridge, east to the river, south past the Colton Interchange, and west to the foothills. She's getting this from callers people stranded on roads, a few in houses on the edge of town. One man at the gas station on Route 6 who can see the mist's boundary from his parking lot. He says it looks like a wall, a clean vertical edge, maybe 200 feet tall with clear air on the other side. He can see blue sky above it. That detail stuck with me. A clean edge. Fog doesn't do that. Fog feathers. It grades from thick to thin. A clean edge means a boundary. A boundary means something is defining it. Lena said she's received 11 calls total. Every caller inside the mist reports the same conditions: near zero visibility, dead still air, no temperature sensation, dense moving patches. 8 of the 11 mentioned hearing something. Descriptions vary: dragging, settling, slow, heavy footfalls, breathing, but the common thread is weight. Whatever's making these sounds is large, and it is pressing down on the earth as it moves. 2 callers reported something new, a smell. Both described it as mineral, like wet calciumite, or the inside of a deep cave. One said it reminded her of the time she toured Blanchard Caverns and stood in the room where the limestone was still actively forming. Dripping, living rock. She said the mist smelled like the inside of the earth. I cracked my window again after hearing that. She's right. There's a mineral quality to the air. Not unpleasant, heavy, old. Lena has also been trying to reach emergency services. The sheriff's 2 patrol units never checked in. The county dispatch number rings, but doesn't connect. Same void my phone calls fall into. She got one call through to a friend at the Colton Fire Department outside the mist boundary, and the friend said she could see the wall of white from the station and that they'd been told by county emergency management to hold position and wait for NWS assessment. Hold position and wait. Lena said that with a flatness that I recognized. It's the sound a person makes when they realize the institutions they've been trained to rely on are looking at the same impossible thing they are and responding with the only tool they have: delay. She also said something else, almost offhand between updates, like she was talking to herself and forgot the mic was live. She said, "The shapes are getting closer to the buildings." I looked up from the herd health form. The mist outside my windshield was thicker than it had been 20 minutes ago. 7:04. Something changed. For the last 10 minutes, there's been a sound underneath everything. Not the compressions, those come and go, out in the mist, unpredictable intervals. This is constant, low. Below what I'd normally register if I weren't sitting in total silence with my engine off. It's a vibration more than a sound. I feel it in the steering wheel, in my teeth, faintly. If I press my palm flat against the driver's side door, I can feel the metal humming. Not from the engine. The engine's off. It's coming from outside, from the ground, or from the air, or from the mist itself. A frequency so low, it's almost geological. I've worked with cattle my whole career, and I'll tell you something about infrasound. Cows detect it long before we do. A herd will get restless hours before a storm because they're picking up pressure waves we can't hear. I've seen a barn full of settled heifers go rigid and try to climb the walls 30 minutes before a tornado siren went off. They feel what we rationalize away. Right now, sitting in this van, I feel like one of those heifers. Something in my chest is telling me to move. Not panic, just move. Get somewhere enclosed. Get underground. Get behind something heavier than a panel van's quarter-inch steel. I think the mist is producing this frequency. Or something inside the mist is. I tried the radio again. KDNT is still on the air, but Lena's not talking. The carrier hum is there, the faint crackle of an open mic, but no voice. I keep staring at the dial like I can will her back into the conversation. Then I heard something on her end. Not her voice, not a chair scraping or a door opening. It was the sound of glass. One sharp tap against a window. Then nothing. Then another tap. Then a long pause. And a third. 3 taps, evenly spaced. Deliberate. Lena came back on. Her voice was different. Controlled, but tighter. She said, "I'm in the interior studio. No windows. But the lobby has floor-to-ceiling glass, and I can see the lobby from the hallway camera. Something is outside the front of the building. I can't see what it is because the mist is too dense. But it's pressing against the glass. The glass is bowing inward. Whatever's leaning on it is heavy enough to flex commercial plate glass without breaking it." She was quiet for a moment. Then, it tapped 3 times, and now it's just pressing, like it's testing the surface, like it knows there's something behind the glass, but it hasn't decided what to do about it. I looked at my own windshield. The mist was close. The dense patches I'd been watching from 40 feet had drifted to maybe 15. Inside the nearest one, I could see, or I thought I could see, variation. A darker region inside the white, not a shadow, a density. Something that the mist was gathered around, or something that the mist was coming from. I did not turn on the headlights. 7:18. Lena described what the lobby camera showed her, and I'm going to relay it as close to her words as I can. She said the glass in the lobby is 6 panels, each about 4 feet wide by 8 feet tall. The rightmost panel is bowed inward by about 3 inches at center. She can see the compression because the panel's edge seal is separating from the frame. A thin line of white mist leaking in through the gap at the top. Behind the glass, pressed against the outside surface, she can see what she described as a flat expanse of something pale. Not white like the mist. Pale like skin that's never seen light. She said it looked like a surface, smooth, slightly textured, pressed flat against the glass the way you'd press your palm against a window. But it covered the entire panel. 4 feet by 8 feet of something pressed flush to the exterior glass. She said she watched it for 2 minutes without breathing. And in those 2 minutes, it shifted once. Not pulled away, not pressed harder. It slid about 6 inches to the right and stopped, like something adjusting its weight. And where it slid, it left a residue on the glass, a faint smear of something wet. Then it detached, pulled away from the glass slowly enough that she could see the surface tension release the glass, bowing back to its normal position with a low, resonant pop. And the shape outside moved to the right, and the mist thickened, and it was gone. Lena said the smear on the glass is visible on camera, slightly iridescent, like the trail of something between a slug and a mineral deposit. She hasn't gone to the lobby to examine it. I wouldn't either. Here's the thing that's been eating at me since she described this. She said the pale surface covered the entire panel, 4 by 8 feet. That means whatever pressed itself against that glass had a body part, a hand, a face, a flank. I don't know, that was at least 32 square feet in surface area. And it pressed gently enough not to break the glass. Control. That implies control. An animal that can press against plate glass with 32 square feet of body and not shatter it is an animal that knows exactly how much force it's applying. I'm a veterinarian. I've handled bulls that weigh 2,200 pounds. I've seen what uncontrolled force does. An animal that size, pressing carelessly against glass, would go through it without slowing down. This was careful, and careful things are paying attention. 7:32, I need to flag something. Sunrise in this part of the state, this time of year, should be roughly 6:50. I checked the almanac card I keep clipped to my visor habit from years of early morning farm calls. March sunrise. This latitude, 6:48 a.m. It's 7:32. The sky should have been light for 45 minutes. I should be able to see the tree line, the fence posts, the cattle guards along Route 9. Instead, the mist is exactly as dense as it was at 6:14. No brightening, no thinning at altitude, no glow from the east. The light from my headlights, when I tested them briefly, reflects back with the same flat intensity it did an hour ago. No dawn. I thought about this for a while before saying it out loud, because I wanted to make sure I wasn't making an error. Maybe the mist is so dense it's blocking all solar radiation. That's physically possible. With extreme fog, you can get twilight conditions in dense enough marine layers. But Lena's caller at the gas station on Route 6 said the boundary of the mist is a clean vertical wall. Clean walls of moisture don't form at 200 feet altitude and then block all sunlight. The sun would come in from an angle. It would light the top of the mist layer from above. There'd be a glow. There's no glow. Lena noticed it too. She said on her 7:20 update, "It should be full daylight. My studio has no windows, but the hallway camera shows the parking lot, and it looks exactly the same as it did at 6 a.m. No change. The mist hasn't brightened. Wherever the sun is, it's not reaching us." I thought about the man at the gas station, standing at the edge of the wall, watching clear blue sky above. I wonder what the mist looks like from outside. I wonder if the sun is shining on top of it. I wonder if the sun is going through it and just not coming out the other side. 7:50. Lena has 18 callers now. I know this because she started keeping a count on air, like a census. 18 people confirmed alive inside the mist boundary, scattered across the 15 by 20 mile area. She's been asking each one for their location, what they can see, what they've heard. I want to talk about 3 of them. First, a man named Dennis, stuck in his truck on the Colton Interchange overpass. He's elevated maybe 35 feet above ground level, and he says the mist is thinner up there. Not clear, but thinner. He can see maybe 50 feet in any direction. He says below the overpass, the mist is solid. He can't see the road surface underneath him. But at his elevation, the density drops. He described looking down into the mist and seeing something move beneath him. Long, slow. He said it took more than 20 seconds to pass under the overpass, and it was not a vehicle. He said the mist swirled around it like water around a ship's hull. Second, a woman named Grace, in a house on Millbrook Lane at the eastern edge of Denton. She's on the 2nd floor with her 2 kids. She said something came up the porch steps at 7:15. She heard the boards creak under the weight. Her porch is old pine, she said, the kind that announces every footstep. 4 creaks, slow, then silence for 1 full minute. then 4 creaks going back down. She said she was standing in her hallway with a fire extinguisher and her phone, and she could see the front door through the banister rail, and the door was flexing inward, not at the knob. At the center of the door, about 5 feet up, as if something had leaned its weight against the center of the panel to feel what was on the other side. It didn't try the knob. It didn't push through. It leaned, and it flexed the door. And then it left. Third, Cal Britton, the man I was driving to see, the man with the heifer. Cal called Lena at 7:40 from his barn, and he was the first caller to report direct visual contact with something in the mist. He said he'd gone out to the barn at 5:30 before the mist came. He was in with the heifer when the mist dropped, and he didn't notice it until he opened the barn door at 6:15 to check the weather. By then, visibility was near zero. He closed the door and went back to working on the heifer. She was doing badly, his words, and he was focused on keeping her alive. At 7:30, he heard something in the paddock. The heifer heard it first. She went rigid and stopped lowing. Cal said he'd never seen a cow in active distress go that silent that fast. He walked to the paddock window, a small reinforced pane at the back of the barn, and he looked out into the mist. He said he saw a leg. That's all. One leg, passing through the paddock, visible for maybe 2 seconds through the window before the mist closed behind it. He said it was pale, hairless, the circumference of a telephone pole, and it bent the wrong way. He said the hoof, if that's what it was, left a print in the paddock, mud that was 9 inches deep. 8:06. I've been sitting here for almost 2 hours now, thinking through what we know and what we don't. The way I would with a sick animal whose symptoms don't fit any diagnosis I've seen. Here's what I keep coming back to. These things, whatever's in the mist, are not attacking. I don't mean they're not dangerous. I mean they're not displaying predatory behavior. Every encounter reported to Lena follows the same pattern. Something approaches. Something tests a surface glass, a door, the ground near a vehicle. Something lingers for a period. Something leaves. No breaches, no forced entry, no violence. Grace's door flexed but held. Lena's lobby glass bowed but didn't break. The thing that walked behind my van didn't touch the van. Cal's paddock visitor passed through and moved on. 18 people have been inside this mist for over 2 hours with things large enough to demolish a house, and nobody has been hurt. That should be reassuring. It isn't, because what I keep thinking about is how a veterinarian evaluates an unfamiliar animal. You watch behavior first. You don't assume anything. A bull standing calmly in a pen isn't safe. He's undecided. The moment you mistake calm for harmless, you've made the mistake that gets you through the fence rails. You respect what the animal can do, not what it's currently doing. These things can press against plate glass without breaking it, can walk through a cattle paddock and leave 9-inch deep prints, can produce infrasound that I feel in my molars, and they're choosing not to break anything. That's the word, choosing. An animal that's choosing is an animal that's evaluating. Lena raised a theory on her 8 o'clock update. She said maybe the mist isn't weather. Maybe the mist is them, their medium, their atmosphere, the thing they move through. And if that's true, then we're not trapped in unusual weather with creatures inside it. We're inside their environment. They brought it with them, or they are it, or the mist and the things in the mist are the same system. I think she might be right, because it would explain the boundary. The man at the gas station described a clean edge, 200 feet tall. If the mist were weather, it would dissipate at the edges. If the mist is an environment, something maintained, something occupied, then a sharp edge makes sense. It's the edge of where they are, and it would explain the light. If the mist is their atmosphere, their medium for existing in the open, It might not transmit our sunlight. It might not need to. Whatever passes for light in there, it's not ours. I've been looking at the mist differently since that thought. Not as something obscuring a landscape, as something replacing it. As if the valley I've known for 4 years has been painted over by a place that belongs to something else. And we're inside it. 8:22. Cal called Lena again. This time his voice was different. Not panicked, tight, compressed. The voice of a man who's been working livestock his entire life and knows when a situation has shifted from manageable to emergency. He said the heifer is dying. The prolapse was bad when he called me at 4:30. And without intervention, she's been deteriorating for hours. He said she's down now, breathing shallow, eyes glassed. He's done what he can with what he has. But what she needs is a vet. She needs me. Specifically, she needs the OB kit in the back of my van and the 400 hours of large animal reproductive emergencies that tell me how to use it. Cal's barn is about 6 miles north of where I'm parked. 6 miles on a road I could drive blindfolded. I've done it in ice storms. I've done it at 2 in the morning with a cow in labor on the other end. Route 9, straight north, left on County Road 18. Half a mile to his gate. 6 miles. In this mist, with these things out there, 6 miles might as well be 600. But here's the thing that's been working on me since Cal's call. I'm a veterinarian. That's not what I do, it's what I am. I took an oath. Not the grandiose version people imagine. It's practical, unglamorous. It says I'll use my skills for the benefit of animal welfare. It doesn't say, when convenient. It doesn't say, when the weather is clear. It doesn't have an exception clause for unexplained phenomena and things that bend the wrong way. There's an animal 6 miles from here that I can save. I have the tools and the training and the vehicle and the road. Everything between me and Cal's barn is empty road and mist and things that, so far, have not hurt anyone. So far. I said this to the radio, knowing Lena couldn't hear me. I said, 6 miles, 20 minutes at crawl speed, headlights off, windows up, follow the center line by feel if I have to. Cal's got a barn with solid walls and a heifer that won't make it to noon. Nobody answered. Obviously, it's a radio, not a phone. But I said it out loud because I needed to hear how it sounded. Needed to hear if it sounded like courage or stupidity. It sounded like both. I sat for another 5 minutes after that. Watched the mist, listened. The low vibration was still there, maybe slightly stronger. The dense patches drifted in their slow, vertical way. I didn't see any pass close. I thought about my ex-wife, for some reason. Not with longing or regret with clarity. She told me once, during the worst part, that my problem was that I'd always choose the animal in trouble over the person in the room. She said it like an accusation. I took it like a diagnosis. She was right. It's not a virtue. It's a compulsion. Something in me orients toward the thing that's suffering and can't speak for itself. And everything else goes soft focus. There's a heifer 6 miles north who can't get up, who's been waiting for me since 4:30, who doesn't know what's in the mist, doesn't know why I'm late, doesn't know anything except that she's in pain and the hands that should be helping her aren't there. I started the engine. 8:29, I'm driving, headlights off. Parking lights, only the small ambers, putting out barely enough to see the white line at the road's edge. I'm doing maybe 12 miles an hour. Windows up, radio on, volume low. The engine's the loudest thing in the world right now, and every part of me wants to kill it and coast. But I need the power steering, and I need the heater fan. because the windshield keeps trying to fog on the inside. And if I lose the little visibility I have through this glass, I'm driving blind. The center line appears in segments. Each yellow dash comes out of the mist about 4 feet ahead, slides under the van, and disappears behind me. That's my entire world right now. 4 feet of yellow paint and the vague suggestion of asphalt. I can feel the road through the steering wheel. Route 9 has a slight crown, and the shoulders are soft gravel. As long as I keep the wheel centered where the crown peaks, I'm on the road. If I feel the tires drift downhill left or right, I correct. It's tactile driving, like closing your eyes and walking a balance beam by the feel of wood under your feet. The mist is different from inside it. When I was parked, I could see the dense patches moving at a distance, track their drift, maintain the illusion of separation between me and them. Now I'm inside the mist the way a fish is inside water. It's not around me. I'm moving through it. The parking lights catch moisture on the windshield that isn't quite condensation. It's heavier, slower, almost oily. The wipers push it to the edges where it builds up in a grayish residue. At 12 miles an hour, the engine is barely above idle. The exhaust is a low mutter behind me. In the silence between the fan and the motor, I can hear the mist. It has a sound. It's not the infrasound vibration from before that's still there, constant. This is on top of it. A faint, papery rustling, like dry leaves turning over in a slow wind. Except there's no wind, and there are no leaves. It's the sound of the mist itself moving, of the density shifting around the van as I push through it. I've gone about a mile. 5 to go. Nothing has come close yet. But twice, in my peripheral vision, through the side windows, I've seen the mist thicken into those vertical columns, far enough away that I only catch the suggestion of them, far enough that I can tell myself I imagined it. I didn't imagine it. They're on both sides of the road, and they're keeping pace. 8:38. I almost missed the turn. County Road 18 branches left off Route 9 at a 30-degree angle. There's a green highway sign marking it and a reflective post on the corner. I caught the post's reflector in my parking lights, a tiny orange diamond flaring out of the white, and braked hard enough to feel the surgical kit shift in the back. The turn put me on a narrower road. CR18 is 2 lanes. No center line, chip seal surface. The edges are soft dirt. And within 10 seconds of turning, I felt the right tires bite into gravel and corrected. There's no crown here. The road is flat, slightly cambered to the right for drainage. I need to hold slightly left to stay centered. The sound changed when I turned. On Route 9, the mist rustled evenly on all sides. On CR18, it's denser on the left, the side that faces open farmland dropping toward the river. On the right, the tree line is close, maybe 20 feet off the shoulder, and the mist seems to pool between the trunks. I can see barely, in the amber glow, the first few feet of trees, trunks standing in white, like columns in a flooded cathedral. Something is in the trees. I know this because one of the trunks moved. Let me be careful here. I was looking right, checking my distance from the shoulder. The tree line was a row of vertical dark shapes in the mist, each one about 12 to 18 inches in diameter, spaced maybe 10 feet apart. Standard second-growth hardwood. I've driven past these trees hundreds of times. And one of them was not where it should have been. It was between 2 others, and it was wider, maybe 3 feet across. And as I watched it in my peripheral vision, for the 2 or 3 seconds it was in frame, it shifted, lateral, about a foot to the right. Not falling, not swaying, moving, adjusting. the way a person shifts their weight from one foot to the other. I looked forward, kept driving, 12 miles an hour, hands at 10 and 2, eyes on the road edge. The smell was stronger here, that mineral heaviness Lena's callers had described. Cave smell, wet limestone. But underneath it, something organic. Not decay, not rot. More like the smell of a living thing's breath. Warm and metabolic and vast. The way a barn smells when 60 head of cattle are breathing in unison on a winter morning. Except there were no cattle out here. Nothing should be breathing at that scale. I rolled through a section where the mist was so thin I could see 30 feet in every direction. For maybe 4 seconds, I had a window. Open road ahead. The tree line on the right, normal-sized, normal-spaced. A fence line on the left with wire and wooden posts marching into the white. And beyond the fence, in the field, standing still in the thinned mist, maybe 50 feet from the road, a shape. Tall, pale. 2 legs, if legs is the right word. A body that went up into the mist and didn't stop. I couldn't see where it ended. Just the lower portion. Legs like Cal described. Wrong bending. The circumference of telephone poles. The mist closed and I couldn't see it anymore. 4.5 miles to go. 8:44. I need to tell you what I just drove through. About 2 miles south of Cal's property, there's a section of CR-18 that runs alongside the Weldon Ranch. Open pasture on both sides, maybe 200 acres total. The Weldons run about 80 head of Angus, and I've treated their cattle enough times to know them by ear, the particular low, conversational lowing of a settled beef herd. I heard them before I saw them. Through the closed windows, through the engine noise and the fan, I heard cattle. Not lowing, not calling, screaming. I don't use that word lightly. Cattle have a distress vocalization that goes beyond normal bawling. The high, raw sound that means pain or terror. And once you've heard it, you don't mistake it for anything else. It goes into your brain stem and sets off every alarm you have. 80 head of Angus were screaming. I slowed to about 5 miles an hour and looked left toward the pasture. The mist was thinner here, some geographic feature. Maybe the slight rise of the land, creating an area of reduced density. I could see maybe 40 feet into the field. The herd was there, bunched tight. 80 animals pressed into a mass so dense their bodies were touching on all sides, heads down, the whole group rotating slowly, counterclockwise. I've seen cattle bunch when they're stressed. It's a prey response. Get tight and present no edges, but I've never seen a herd rotate. They were moving in unison, like a school of fish, circling slowly. And every single animal was vocalizing at maximum volume. Beyond the herd, in the mist, I could see why. 3 of them, 3 shapes, spaced roughly equidistant around the herd, standing still in the mist. I could only see the lower portions, the legs, the base of what I have to call bodies, because I don't have another word. Pale, massive. The nearest one was maybe 30 feet from the edge of the herd, and even at that distance, it dwarfed the cattle. The cows came up to maybe 1/3 of the height of its visible leg. They were standing still, not approaching, not retreating, just standing around the herd in a triangle, like points on a compass, while 80 terrified animals circled and screamed. I thought about what I said earlier. These things are not attacking, they're evaluating. This looked like evaluation, like 3 researchers observing a specimen, patient, unhurried, interested. None of the cattle broke from the group. Prey animals know, in their bones, what breaks from the herd dies. So they held together, and they circled, and they screamed, and the three shapes stood in the mist and observed. And I drove past at 5 miles an hour with my hands shaking on the wheel. I wanted to stop, professionally, instinctively. I wanted to stop and intervene. Do something. Honk the horn, flash the lights, drive into the field and scatter whatever was there. But I can't help 80 head of cattle. I can help one heifer. And Cal is 2 miles away. I kept driving. The screaming lasted a long time behind me. 8:51. I'm here. I found Cal's gate by memory. The mailbox post caught my parking lights, and I braked just in time to make the turn. His driveway is 300 yards of packed dirt, straight in, bordered by post and wire fencing on both sides. I pulled through the gate and followed the tire ruts by feel. Cal's place emerged from the mist in pieces. First the fence corner of the front paddock, then the house, a dark shape on the right, no lights in the windows. Then the barn, directly ahead. A big red steel Morton building, 60 by 40, with a sliding door on the south face. The sliding door was open about 3 feet. Yellow light from inside Cal's got the barn wired to a generator. In the mist, that light looked impossible. Warm, real, a rectangle of gold in all that white. I pulled the van up to the barn door and killed the engine. For a moment I just sat there, looking at that rectangle of light. And I felt something give way in my chest. Not relief exactly, more like the feeling of reaching a point you weren't sure you'd reach. I gathered the OB kit from the back, shoulder-length gloves, lubricant, the chains and handles for assisted delivery, a bottle of oxytocin, calcium gluconate in case she crashed, a fluid line, and 2 bags of lactated ringers. I packed it all into the canvas field bag and slung it over my shoulder. Then I opened the van door and stepped into the mist. I'd been sealed inside the vehicle for almost 3 hours. The first thing I noticed was the sound. Without the van's metal shell around me, the infrasound vibration went from a subtle hum to a physical presence. I could feel it in my rib cage, in my sinuses. The air was heavy, not hard to breathe, but dense, like inhaling at altitude in reverse. Every breath felt like it had too much substance. The mineral smell was strong. Underneath it, that warm, metabolic breath. I crossed the 8 feet from the van to the barn door in about 4 seconds. It felt like 40. The mist pressed against my face and hands like something alive. Not wet, not cold, just present, attentive. I slid through the 3-foot gap and into the barn. Cal was kneeling by the heifer. Cal looked up when I came in, and his face did something I've never seen from him in 4 years of professional friendship. It crumbled, just for a second. The tight composure he'd been holding for 3 hours fell apart, and I saw naked gratitude so raw, it looked like grief. Then he pulled himself together and stood up and said, "She's bad, Joel. She's real bad." I went to work. The heifer was a 2-year-old first calf Hereford, down on her right side in a straw-bedded stall. The prolapse was severe, the entire uterus everted and exposed, swollen to nearly twice normal size, the tissue dark with congestion. She'd been straining intermittently, making it worse. Her eyes were sunken, her gums pale, her heart rate elevated. She was shocky. Without treatment, she had maybe 2 hours. I'm telling you this because what happened next was the most normal 2 hours of my life. And I need that on the record. I need you to know that inside this mist, with things that defy every biological category I've ever been taught standing in the fields around us, I did my job. I put on shoulder-length gloves, and I cleaned that uterus with warm saline, and I reduced the swelling with hypertonic sugar solution packed into a towel, and I manually replaced the organ into the pelvic cavity. which takes patience and steady pressure and about 45 minutes when the tissue is this compromised. I sutured a retention suture, a Booner stitch, if you want the terminology to keep it from coming back out. I started her on IV fluids and calcium, and I gave her a low dose of oxytocin to help the uterus contract back to size. Cal held her head the whole time, talked to her quietly, kept her calm while I worked. We didn't discuss the mist. We didn't discuss what was outside. For 2 hours, we were a veterinarian and a cattleman doing what we've always done, keeping an animal alive that didn't want to die. She started to turn around about 45 minutes after the IV started. Her eyes brightened. Her heart rate came down. She lifted her head and looked at Cal with that particular expression cows have when they're annoyed but not suffering, a sort of exhausted dignity. He laughed. First real laugh I'd heard all day. I washed my arms in the utility sink and peeled off the gloves, and I was standing there drying my hands when I heard it. From outside the barn, close, on the north side where there are no doors and no windows, just solid steel wall panels bolted to the frame. A sound. Not the compressions I'd heard on the road, not the settling footsteps. Something different. Something I have no veterinary or zoological frame of reference for. It was a call. Low, resonant, and long. Somewhere between the groan of ice shifting on a deep lake and the lowest note of a pipe organ. It lasted about 8 seconds, and it vibrated the steel panels of the barn hard enough to rattle the tools hanging on the wall rack. Cal looked at me. I looked at Cal. Then, from somewhere far to the south, maybe miles away, something answered. The answering call was identical in pitch, but longer. Maybe 12 seconds. It came from the direction of the Weldon Ranch, from the direction of the herd I'd passed. The 3 shapes standing in their patient triangle. Inside the barn, the tools stopped rattling. The heifer, who had been settling into a drowsy post-treatment calm, lifted her head and went rigid. Not the panicked rigidity of pain. The frozen stillness of a prey animal who has just detected something her body recognizes, even if her brain can't name it. Cal and I stood very still. Then another call from the east. Different distance closer, maybe half a mile. Same pitch, same resonance, same duration as the first. And another from the west, farther away, barely audible but unmistakable. And another from the north, behind the barn, so close the steel panels hummed sympathetically. 5 calls, 5 directions, all the same pitch. They were talking to each other. I went to the small paddock window at the back of the barn, the one Cal had looked through earlier. The glass was dirty, and the mist was thick beyond it. But I pressed my face close and cupped my hands around my eyes and looked. The mist was moving. Not drifting, flowing, like a current had been established in it, a directional pull. And all the density that had been hanging static and heavy for 3 hours was now streaming northeast. The white shapes I'd been tracking, the dense patches, the vertical columns were moving with the current. All of them, in the same direction. I counted. In the maybe 60 feet of visibility the window gave me, I saw 4 distinct dense patches pass from left to right. Each one towered above the paddock fence. Each one moved smoothly, steadily, without the slow, aimless pacing I'd seen before. This was purposeful, coordinated. Something had been communicated in those calls, and now they were responding. I went back to the radio in my van. I didn't want to step outside again, but the barn didn't have a receiver, and I needed to hear Lena. I sprinted the 8 feet, threw myself into the driver's seat, and turned the dial. KDNT was still transmitting. Lena was mid-sentence. All callers reporting the same thing. The mist is moving. It's flowing northeast across the valley. Multiple reports of shapes in the mist moving in the same direction. Dennis on the overpass says he can see them from above. He says there are dozens. He says they're all going the same way. He says... Her voice hitched. He says the mist is thinning behind them. 9:12. It's happening slowly, but it's happening. I'm standing in Cal's driveway next to the van, looking south down the length of his property. The mist is still here, but it's different. The density that was uniform for 3 hours has developed gradients. Thicker to the northeast, thinner to the southwest. Like water draining from a tub, the level dropping unevenly, finding the low points last. I can see 100 feet now, in the thinning direction. The fence line, the driveway, the outline of the house. Above me, the mist is lifting, not dissolving, lifting. The ceiling of it, which had been pressed down to near ground level, is rising. I can see a faint brightness above. Not the sun, not yet, but the suggestion of light from above, filtering through a thinning medium. The mineral smell is fading. The infrasound vibration is still present, but quieter, like a machine winding down at distance. Lena confirmed what I'm seeing. 3 of her callers on the southwest edge of the mist boundary reported watching the mist pull away from them like a tide going out. 1 woman on Farm Road 14. The same woman who first heard the dragging sound said she watched the mist recede across an open field. And in its wake, the ground was wet. Not dewy, soaked. As if the mist had been bearing moisture down into the earth the entire time it was present, saturating every surface. She said the wet ground was imprinted. Tracks, hundreds of them. In the soft earth of a plowed field, footprints the size of garbage can lids, sunk deep, spaced far apart. Not a path, a territory. Tracks overlapping, circling, concentrated in some areas, sparse in others. 3 hours of something enormous walking through a farmer's field. And the tracks were the only proof it had been there. Dennis on the overpass reported the same thing. The mist pulled away below him, and the road surface was dark with moisture, and he could see marks in the soft shoulders on both sides. Deep, regular, heavy. Whatever these things are, wherever they came from, they're leaving, moving northeast in a coordinated flow, taking their atmosphere with them. I asked Cal to come outside. He didn't want to, he wanted to stay with the heifer, but I told him to come look. He stood next to me in the driveway, and we watched the mist thin, and we didn't say anything for a long time. Then Cal pointed, southwest. Through the thinning white, I could see color for the first time in hours. The dark green of a winter tree line, the brown of a dormant pasture, and above it, piercing the haze at maybe 10 degrees above the horizon, the sun. Small and pale and far away, but there. We both just stood there, looking at it. The way you'd look at someone you thought you'd lost. 9:38. The mist is mostly gone from Cal's property. Thin wisps in the low areas, the drainage ditch along CR 18. The swale behind the barn, but the air is clear enough to see the full extent of the property. The sky is blue. The temperature is 41 degrees. March. I walked the paddock. The ground tells a story I'm not equipped to interpret, but I'm going to describe it as carefully as I can, because someone should. There are tracks in the paddock mud, the ones Cal saw earlier from the window, the 9-inch deep prints. But now that I can see the full area, there are more than I expected. The paddock is about 60 by 40 feet, and there are tracks covering most of the soft ground. Not random, a pattern. The prints form a rough circle around the barn, as if something Several somethings had been walking a perimeter, slowly, for hours. The depth varies. Some prints are 6 inches, some are over a foot. Either the creatures varied in size, or they varied in how much weight they were putting down. The spacing between prints is roughly 8 feet, which would suggest a stride length consistent with something I don't know. I don't know what's consistent with an 8-foot stride length. An elephant's stride is about 6 feet. These things are bigger than elephants. In the center of the paddock, near the water trough, I found something else. An area, about 4 feet in diameter, where the mud is not just compressed, but glazed, smooth. As if something had stood there, motionless, for a very long time, and the weight and heat of it had fired the mud into something approaching ceramic. I knelt and touched it. Hard, slightly warm, faintly iridescent on the surface, like the smear Lena described on her lobby glass. Cal came out and looked at it with me. He didn't say anything. He reached down and tried to push his thumb into the glazed surface, and it didn't give. It was fired. Solid. Something stood in Cal's paddock for hours, unmoving. And its body was so dense and so hot that it turned mud into pottery. I took a sample, scraped some of the glazed material into a specimen jar from my kit. I don't know what I'll do with it. Send it to the state vet lab, maybe, or a geology department. I don't know whose expertise this falls under. I don't think there's a department for this. Lena reported on her 9:30 update that the mist has withdrawn from approximately 70% of the original boundary area. It's still visible to the northeast, a white wall receding toward the foothills, taking its contents with it. NWS has upgraded from fog advisory to unexplained atmospheric event under investigation, which is the bureaucratic version of, we don't know what that was. Neither do I. But I'm standing in the proof that it was real. I've been driving back south on CR18 toward Route 9. The road is clear, the sky is clear. The mist is a white line on the northeast horizon, distant now, moving toward the mountains. The Weldon Ranch is on my left. I slowed down and looked. The herd is still in the field, alive. All 80 head, as far as I can count from the road. They're not bunched anymore. They're scattered in the normal feeding pattern of cattle on a March morning heads down, grazing spread across the pasture. From a distance, you'd never know anything had happened. But the field is marked. Even from the road, I can see the tracks, the glazed spots, 3 of them in a rough triangle around where the herd had been circling. 3 observation posts, baked into the earth by 3 enormous stationary bodies. They stood there. They watched. They left. I want to land on something clean, a theory, a conclusion, a lesson. That's what I do professionally. I observe symptoms. I form a diagnosis. I prescribe a treatment. It's how I make sense of things. I don't have a diagnosis for this. What I have is this. Something entered the valley this morning. It brought its own atmosphere. It moved through our space with the patience and deliberation of an intelligence that has no reason to hurry. It examined us, our structures, our livestock, our roads, our fields. It pressed against our glass and flexed our doors and walked our paddocks and stood so still and so long that it turned the ground beneath it to stone. And then it left, northeast, toward the mountains, taking its mist with it. I don't know if it will come back. I don't know where it came from. I don't know what it wanted, or whether wanted is even the right framework. I know a heifer is alive because I drove 6 miles through it and did my job. I know Cal's barn held because steel walls don't care what's leaning on the other side. I know Lena kept broadcasting because that's what she does. the same way I keep driving to the animal that needs me. The mist is on the horizon. I'm watching it in the rearview mirror. It's smaller every time I look. I have 3 more farm calls to make today. The road is open. The sun is up. I'm going to keep driving. One more thing. I pulled onto Route 9, heading south, and I was about a mile from where I'd originally parked. I could see the spot. La Raisas, the shoulder gravel disturbed where my tires had sat for 2 hours when I looked in the rearview mirror. The mist on the horizon was thinner than it had been 5 minutes earlier. The mountains behind it were partially visible, dark shapes through a white veil. And in that veil, just for a moment, the thinning mist resolved into a shape. I saw it the way you see a figure in clouds, except it wasn't a cloud. It was the mist pulling away from something as it retreated, the atmosphere drawing back like a curtain. And in that gap between full concealment and total dispersal, the shape was visible. It went up a long way, far enough that my neck strained following it through the rearview mirror. Legs like Cal described, pale, wrong-bending, wider than any living thing I know. A body above them that was not round and not flat, but something my eyes couldn't organize into a category. It was textured, ridged, or folded, or layered. I couldn't tell at that distance. And above the body, a region I would have called a head if it had any features I recognized. It didn't. It was smooth and pale, and it tapered slightly, and it was oriented down, toward the ground, toward the valley. Looking back, it was looking back at us. The mist closed around it, and the shape was gone, and the white line on the horizon continued its slow retreat toward the foothills. Within a few minutes, the mountains were fully visible, and the sky was clean, and March sunlight fell on the valley the way it always had. I drove the rest of the way with the radio on. Lena was still talking. Farm reports, local weather, a measured voice giving measured information to whoever was listening. I turned the volume up, and I let her voice fill the van, and I drove toward the next animal that needed me. The road was dry in the sun, but in the soft shoulders, the tracks went on for miles.